Yes. So yes, inaweza kuwa yako sasa, si yangu. Okay, somehow. Oh, okay. So by the other class, we had already done this. Like I can do that, and I can add the list there. I can add another thing there, and it could add another list. So today, what we are going to do is now to make this one work out using JavaScript and using whatever we have learned so far in JavaScript, so that we can exercise our what we have learned. So I'll just minimize this, go to my index.js file. So yeah, so far our index.js file only had a single function. This is a utility function called list item. And I'm going to like move this function down and say utilities, AMA utility functions. So this is a generator function. In fact, if I may talk about a bit about generator functions, generator function. So is it a generator function or a factory function? They can be both, I believe. So a factory function is a function that is used like to make work easier by generating other stuff. For example, this one takes in an item and it prints out the item, like it returns HTML containing the item. If you look at this keenly, you see this is a string using the backticks, and the reasons why I use backticks, it makes string concatenation. I'm making or bringing two strings together easily. Otherwise, you could use the plus. Let me talk a bit about string concatenation. Um, let string 1 equals to Dalmas, and let string 2 equals Sogembo. So if I wanted to, let me try to see if this is going to um, show output. Yes, sounds it's working. So let's say I want to concatenate these two strings together. I could say console.log string 1 plus a string 2. So if I save this one, why is console not working, my friend? Okay. So if I do that one and open the console log, you will see Dalma Sogembo and Papamoto. Like these two things have been concatenated, but they are too close together. Somebody is unmuted. Jeremiah, you can mute a bit. So you can see I have concatenated or added these two strings together or brought them together, but they are too close to each other. Then I could go ahead and add a space there, then plus there. So this is called string concatenation. If I save that, you will notice now Dalma Sogembo has a space at the middle here. But what if I don't want like to use plus plus plus, and why do I need to use this instead of using pluses? Now let me do another string here, console.log. But in this case, in concatenation, I can do that and I say dollar signs, curly braces, I say string 1, and go ahead, do dollar sign, and I say string 2. If I save that, I come here, you will notice the same output, Dalma Sogem with a space in the middle. But the second string, somehow it's readable. I didn't have to do a lot of pluses. I didn't have to do like a single space here. Then I just added the space here directly. So when it comes to adding or making a string or making a single sentence, then it's better you use the backticks with this sort of string concatenation. I'm bringing two strings, formatting a string in this method. So this one is far better and easier to work with, so that I can say here my first name is the string 1, and I can go ahead and say and my last name is, I could say that. So if I save this, let me hide Linda. So you'll notice I have just like written a complete sentence easily But in this case, if we were to do the same, my and like add all the strings together, I will just copy this up to there, then say do that string, space there, do a string there, space, add a plus, go ahead. My first name is, I don't need this space. I go and copy this second string here and paste it here and say, and my last name is, you will notice somehow this one is longer and it has a lot of pluses. So this is adding to string. I'm at the so-called string concatenation. So this one is more of readable and easier to use. I can go ahead and quickly add another string here or another message there, and it will still work out. This one, yes, it has worked out also, but this one looks like a longer method. So when you are doing or making a string from when you have moving parts in a string, like you have moving variables, changing variables in a string, better you use backticks with dollar sign and the curly braces, then the variable name there. That one is better. So that's a short story about string concatenation. And I've talked about this as a factory function or a generator function, helping us generate some stuff. So for this case, this generator function, it's taking in an item and it's returning a string or an element, HTML element in form of a string. So whenever you do this, you can call this as a factory function. So I can go ahead and look at the rest of the code. So by the other time, we had already covered on how to select something from the document. That is, we selected the list input, and also we selected the input itself. Then we went ahead and listened on the form submission. This is an event listener. We prevented the form default, then we went ahead and, so if I may come back here, whatever we did was, if I pass in here my today's tasks like that, this is a form, it has an input, and this is the button that's supposed to click. When you click, it submits the form. When I submit the form, somehow it reads the input here, deletes the input the moment I submit the form, and it adds it to the list of tasks. So, or the list of list to the list of this list. Yes. So whatever I have done so far, when somebody submits a form, this is called listening on the form submission. So that's why I've said add event listener. Take the form, add an event listener to it, listen for a specific event. Whenever form is submitted, then when a form is submitted, usually by default it refreshes the page. For example, this one has not been prevented default. I say do something. So if I submit it, you will notice the page has refreshed, fully the page has refreshed. That's the default action, the default way forms work. By default, all forms, whenever they are submitted, they refresh the page. So always remember, when you don't want the form to refresh the page, just add an event listener to it, listen for submit event, and this is an arrow function. We go back to the way arrow functions were working the other time. So yes, so to be fair, I'm just going to delete this and we just start afresh so that they can explain the whole story behind and add more things to it. So in this case, we are going to use just this index file, and so far it's just empty. And I said we can add here use strict to make sure we don't have any bugs as we go on. So the first thing I'm gonna do here is, we have this entire thing. It has lists, and also it has now the to-dos for specific list, or the tasks for the specific list. So what we want to do is have a single class that can monitor our application, take care of lists, and also take care of the to-dos, also take care of the state of the to-dos. That way we can be able to learn about the classes better and how we can use classes. Yesterday we were only talking about classes and just using the car class to do our stuff. So today we are not going to do a car class, but today we are going to do a to-do app class, which can be able to manage all this. And I'll show you how to do it and make it more efficient. Somehow, most of the code will be beginner friendly to allow you learn more things. So I'll just scroll up. First, we have this list, and each list they have a holder here where they should go into. And also, if we go to this other list, or if we go down to this other to-dos now, they also have their to-dos folder here, and each to-do has the to-do item class and some other stuff in it. So what we're going to do is just take care of this and make sure like everything is working out correctly. So without further ado, we'll just go to this and create the class first. So this class is going to be a to-do app class generally, and then I'm just going below it and initiating a new to-do app class. So const, as it const, better use let app. So it's just an app. Okay, I'll just do like, you could do like a let to do app like this, or just do an app, let app equals to new to do app. So we are not going to pass any parameters for today, believe, yes. So it's just going to be like another factory class, just with the number of functions. So in this case, we are going to have a bunch of functions. The first one will be add list. This will be the first function. This one will be the one that will take care of adding a new list to the lists page here. When I type something, it's going to add something, add the list there. Yes, a question. Okay, all right. Then it means I was hearing my own things. So yes, go ahead, John. Okay, so sounds funny. So I'm not getting your side and you are muted. Okay, so the first one will be the yes. Oh, okay. So that will be the first function. Remember, this is a class. It has haina hizo brackets. You just do curly braces around it, and that is it. The first function will be the add list function. The next one can be add to do. The next function will be uh, delete list. Okay, let me just make these lists come like the way they should work. All of these functions: add list, delete list, add to do, delete. So instead of delete to do, I'm going to first do update to do, and then the last function for now will be delete to do. So far these are the functions that we have, and we are going to make them now work out. So add list should do something, delete list should do something, add to do should do something, update to do should update a to do, and delete to do should delete a to do. So before we continue down deep, I'm going to initiate here something called a constructor, or write a constructor function. It's a function. Yes, it's a function by default, or an object. So first I'm going to say this dot lists equals to just an empty list, so that we can be able to keep track of the number of lists that we have. Then this dot to do's equals to an empty to do. So This is kind of hard to work around because if I say this dot lists does this, somehow it might be difficult to wrap, or the way we are going to link lists to to-dos will be tough. So what I'm going to do, I'm only going to track lists only, then to-dos will be added to each list. So I'm going to do another function here called generate list. So this generate list is going to like take care of the add list and do something. And it's going to take in some value. So I'm going to say list name here. And whatsoever it's going to return, it's going to return this, the name. Okay, let me start by list name. Now we are going to use an object here, list name, which is this list name on top there, and to do's below here, like that. So I'm not going to add an ID here to track each list group. So I'm just going to do just to do's like that. And for now, the to do's are just an empty list. Then when I'm adding a new list here, just take this dot list equals to just check the previous list that were there using a spread operator, this dot lists, comma, then I'm going to generate a new list with the list name that is going to be passed here. Just that list name. So far whatever I've done here sounds kind of new and inaonekana too complex, but let me go back and explain it. Juu hakuna haja nikimbie kwenda chini before we see what's happening. So I said we are doing a new constructor here, and in the constructor I'm going to initiate like the elements or the parameters of this class. And this class is going to have a new list, or I have initiated the lists item here, and I have initialized it with an empty array. So I said this is an array with square brackets. Then I have created another factory function here. Factory function. Its work is just to generate new lists, new list groups, given a list name. So when you give this generate list a list name, it's going to return an object that has the list name and the to-dos. So the next thing we want to take care of, what happens at this particular point here. So I have said this dot list equals to just curly braces, the array thing. Then I have spread the old lists, like whatever we started with here, an empty list, and added a new item to the list item. So for us to like see what's happening here, I'm going to just print the app here below. Not print, say console.log. I'm going to console.log the app, but in this case, I'm going to say app.add list, and I'm going to say YouTube list. YouTube tasks, like that. So if I save that, let's see what we have in our console. So we have printed at the to-do app, and if you look at the to-do app itself, somehow it has this property here called lists, and in this property of list we have the first list item, that's YouTube tasks, and in it we have the list name YouTube task and the to-dos, which is just an empty array. What about the functions that we created? These ones here, the add list, delete list, add to do. Also, if you come under the prototype or the object thing here, prototype there, you will see all the functions here. Add list, add to do, the constructor. We have the delete list, delete to do, generate list, and update to do. So whatever we have done up to this point is like, okay, we have gone through down and created the first class, the to do app class, and currently it only has a single like property, that's the list. Yes, somebody with a question? Yes, good question. What's a prototype? Uh, do I really have a correct answer? Best option is just to search. What is okay, the yes function slash class prototype. So the prototype data property of a function instance is used when the function is used as a constructor with the new operator. So they have said here one thing, you can only see prototype whenever you have used the new operator. Um, Funny. Let me try to delete the new and see whether it's going to work out. Yes, it's not going to have. So it's saying class constructor to do app cannot be invoked without new. Then, as I said, you have to initiate a class using new, then it will work out better. So what about a prototype? A prototype exists, or this prototype property exists for each class and for each function, so that you can be able to extend your class, or you can be able to extend uh, your your function. So prototype is like uh, in terms of it's like the base of the class or the base of a function. The moment you create a new function, always it has that prototype with it. So the work of a prototype is to add new things to it, or to extend or have some functions. So I can just come here to my app here. I say app dot prototype, it like that, dot another function equals to just an empty function that does nothing. Console.log, yeah, like that. So cannot set properties of undefined, setting another function. Kwani prototype inaandikwa ngaje? App. Funny, I can't use prototype. I think I'm not using it in the right term. But using prototypes is like you can extend the original class or the original function using or add more properties to the function. I believe I'm missing something here. That's where everything is not working. It's better to avoid it, or I give you the wrong information about the prototype. Just know whenever you create a new function or a new class, by default it comes with that prototype. So for that, I can be able to just come down here and console.log this function here, the list item function. Will that I just need to do that and see whether it will work out. It just printed out the whatever that was supposed to work out, but it has not printed out the list function the way we wanted it to print. Why is it not printing it? A function and it does nothing. Yeah, things are not working out here well on my side. I can be free with that. So just know whenever you create a new function, a new class, it comes with the prototype. Maybe explain it deeper when we go on about prototypes, function prototypes and object prototypes. And they exist for object classes functions. Objects ni ile yenye nilisema kama hii ni object. This one here, this is an object. So it already has its own prototype. So if I were to come here into the list, check into the first one, you will see it has a prototype here where you can get all the rest of the functions, the rest of other stuff. So always remember, even this other array here, an array is also an object, it has a prototype. So with a prototype and the rest of the functions here that you can use to learn about arrays. Okay, I'll just continue. I don't know whether I've answered your questions correctly about a prototype. I didn't create it. It already exists by each. Each object has a prototype. but you can delete it, I believe. Yeah. Yeah, you could say so. So a prototype is like giving you more functionality to your function, to your object. So the prototype is the one holding the rest of the functions, and also prototype can be used to extend an object. Vile sahi hapa ni kama anaitumia vibaya, I'm using it in the wrong way. That's why it's not able to extend my class. Believe I'm using it in the wrong way. So maybe with the time, as I said, I might not be able to explain everything, but at least give you the basic foundation of what you are supposed to do with JavaScript. So far we have said we have added a new list. So I can be able to say app dot add list, and I say let me give a project I'm doing LMS project. Let's say I have different tasks I want to do with this LMS. Then you will notice my list has expanded to two. Then it has the YouTube tasks with its to-dos and the LMS project. Now the next question can be, I want to see those lists here in this lists tab here. How can I be able to print them there? So for us to add the lists to this given application, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the holder or use the DOM API to read the holder of this. So it's called the list there. So best thing I would like to do is just come down here and do another function called a function get element, like that. It's going to take in the element ID to be specific. So element underscore ID. Then whatever it's going to return, it's going to do document dot query selector get element by ID instead of query selector, then the element ID. So the get element, it's going to return that, and I'm going to use it directly into this to do here, or in this function here, in this class here, I mean. So I'm going to say print lists to web, to document, to doc, like this. There we go. So what I'm going to do here is a const lists holder equals to get element, and this one is going to be lists. This actually it's list, yeah, list. So just do that, list. Then if I were to do that, console.log the lists holder, like that. Currently you might not notice anything else here, but if I come down below my app here, just after adding the list, I say app dot print list to doc, like that. If I do that, you will notice it has printed a UL here, which is empty. Like it has just printed an empty UL there. Then, yeah, let me switch it up. There. Yeah, you will notice it's just printed this UL, which is an empty list thing with the number of attributes. So what am I going to do here? So since I have now this list element here, I can be able to identify it. It exists. Then I can go ahead and use it to hold the information. So I can just come here if there's a list holder. Now I'm checking whether this one exists or it does not exist. If it exists, like iko kwa DOM, as for example in this case it's here, then go ahead and add some information to it. So what I'm going to do here is just loop through the elements. So const const lists equals to const list elements equals to just an empty string. Then what I'm going to do is to loop through all the lists and add them to this list element. So how am I going to do that? So I'm going to do this dot lists dot map. I'm mapping through each of these lists. Then for each list item, for each list item, what I'm going to do is just find the list elements plus equals to, we had created another generator function here called list item. So copy that, do it there, list item. But something's weird here. If I do that, I might not get the right information. Yeah. So I'm just going to say list item. This is a function, but I have another like variable that has the same name. So when you come and you find yourself having the variable, this is a variable here, and it has the same name as your function, this is not going to work. Just remember to change the variable name to item for you in order for it to be able to like take care of the function and not start saying this has not been defined. Just do that and leave it there. So uncount list item is not a function. It's going to say it's not a function because it's like you are referencing this one and calling it here. And we said the function invocation here brackets up and mbele, it only works with functions, not just blank variables or blank variables. Yes. So this is just a variable. So if I change that one there, we are not going to get the error, and also we are not going to see our list item added there. So best, I'm going to pass in here the item, and if I go down and print the console.log, the list elements, you will notice something. It's saying we have this one, the first one here, list item, it is an object, another one, object. And you might ask, why is it saying object? It's because this list item, it only takes in just a single, like it only takes in a string. But in this case, if you were to print out the item, okay. If I were to come down here where I've used the generator function and print out the item, console.log the item, it's not a string. You can notice it's an object which has a list name and the to-dos. So it's not like working out the way it should work. So best option is just to make sure not to print or to pass in the object here, but rather the list name. So since we have passed in here an object, then I can be able to say item dot list name like this, list underscore name. So it's going to say YouTube tasks and LMS project because you have read the name from this object. Then I want to print or add them. Let me hide that one. I want to add them to the list holder. What I'm going to do to the list holder is just come below here and say list holder dot inner HTML equals to list elements like that. So I'm just going to delete that one. Now, if I save, you will notice it has said YouTube tasks here, and also it has said the LMS project, meaning it has taken care of or it has printed out the list that we had. Currently, you might notice I click there and it's like, okay, let me activate this. The reason as to why it's doing so, it's because of the hover. In small screens, whenever you click an item, it's like that's when you have hovered. That's when people tend to take care of hovering on small screen. You don't take care of, like you just maybe do something on small screen when somebody hovers, but in large screen somehow, even if I were to come back and click, it's not going to stick there. But on small screen, when I click, that's when the element takes it in as and hover. Let's continue. So currently we have been able like to print out the list items to the yeah, we have been able to print out the list items to the document here. So what I'm going to do next here is now to use the form, this form here, to add these list items instead of hard coding them like this or adding them like this. So what I'm going to do here is first selecting the form, this list form here. So just below the app, const list form equals to get element by ID list form. Now I have my list form. What I'm going to do here is say just delete these ones from here. They are not necessary now. I'm going to delete them, but I'm going to just remain with this one. But at the end, I might also need to like get rid of it. For now, let me just leave it there. So what I'm going to do here is go to the list form dot add event listener, submit. Whenever somebody submits that form, comma, so you do the string here, then comma, then you do an arrow function at the end, brackets, the arrow, then the curly braces. Now this is an arrow function. From there up to there, you can notice it's the normal function that we were writing from the other class, the first class about JavaScript functions. And you might notice it does not have the initially the keyword function, and also it does not have a name. This is an anonymous function. So that's how you do create anonymous functions, and you will be using this much of the time when we be coding. For example, another function of the same kind that I used was here when I was writing the map. Where is it? This map here. This is another arrow function. So you will notice they will be appearing almost everywhere. Yes. Uh-huh. Mm. Oh, good. So about adding event listeners. So by default, we usually do like, okay, thank you for asking. So let me go in. So we had this, no, I think what we all know for up to now is a button. So I could say here, I have a button, click me. Sindio, I believe you did this. So in this button, we could say on click, uh, write some JavaScript here. So for this case, let me do some function here quickly under my utility functions. Function click me. So, and in this function, I'm going to say console.log. Uh, you have just clicked me like that. So this is a function, and whenever we use the onClick attribute, it needs to pass in a function like that. Click me. So if I save, come to the browser, let me go. I have this thing down here. Can I hide it? No, I can't. Let me do the function on top. Hold on a moment, guys. Hello, poa sana. Yeah. Aha. Kama si story mrefu, yeah, you could go ahead. Oh, domains. Oh, okay. Can I get back to you after nimemaliza class niko nayo sasa? Yeah. Okay, sorry for that, guys. So yeah, I was talking about the event listen and I said I needed to move this button mahali naweza click. So let me move it upwards. Nitaiweka hapa juu tu kwa chini ya header. Yes, hapo itakuwa sawa. So we have our button here and if I click, it says you have just clicked me. So this kind of works well, yes, but at the same time, you don't have like to come here and say, where is that button here, and add this attribute here on click. Sometimes you don't want to do this because you want to like, instead of doing it manually like this, like listening for it, then add the function here. So what I'm going to do is just change this a bit. Instead, I will say an ID here and say click me. So go to my code just below my list form, and I'm going to get the button, const click me button, and I say get element, and I'm going to pass in the ID, click me. And remember, this is a factory function that will help me like get elements. Instead of me going ahead and writing the entire thing, document.get element by ID like that, and I say click me. I reduced this and created a function that will be just do that exactly. So this is the function. So if you look at the function, it just returns that document.getElement by ID, the element ID. So I have my click me button here. What I'm going to do here is, instead of now, I just moved the onClick function from here, the onClick attribute. I'm going to add it using JavaScript. So the click me button dot add event listener. You see it give me add event listener. So add event listener like that. And in this case, I'm not going to listen on any event, but the click event. So if you do that, just do the string, the quotes, it's going to bring you all the events you can add to that button. So if I scroll down, that is in case you are using VS Code or other advanced IDE, but Sublime Text might not do the same. So you'll notice it's saying we have the click event there, the change. Currently, as I said, these event listeners are also very many. So you can listen for any event. For example, for a form, we only listen for this event, STSS, submit event, that one. For inputs, you can listen for input change or input blur or input. So all of them are here. So you can just say, you can also add an event listen to a button on a keyboard. The moment somebody clicks down, for example, on key down. So where is it? Where is it? So for this case, I'm listening for an event called click. Yeah, that one. I will listen for an event called click. I do a comma. You can write a function here, but this function is not going to have a name like that. So I have not used an arrow function in this case, but just an anonymous function. The keyword function without the function name, the brackets, then the curly braces. This is an anonymous function. The other function you could do is this arrow function. Also, let me just do an arrow function instead of an anonymous function. It's also an anonymous function, curly braces, equal signs, greater than sign, curly braces. There we go. So you will notice it's the same. You could do just a function or anything. Then here I will call my function the click me function. If I save the file like that and then come back and say click me there, you will just still say it's printing, you have just clicked me. Why is that so? So I have just moved the on click from here. For example, just do on click here and say click me. So I have moved that function from there. If I click, you might notice two prints out. Yes, you have just clicked me. You have just clicked me because I have the on click here. So this one is going to run also on click when you click this button, and also the one you are listening for. I'm listening for a click. Then this function is going to be called, which will in turn invoke the click me function, and hence we have the two prints out. You have just clicked me. So you could decide to do on clicks like this, or you can just append them to the button or to the element using the add event listener. As I have said, there are several events, several of them, about 72 events. Is it 72? Yeah, about 72 events, if I'm not wrong. So these events, for example, the mouse down, you will just listen for such events in your DOM. Yeah, that's a short story about events. But for forms, let me just extend it a bit. For forms, you can't add on click on a form like this. Though it's going to work, forms don't have on, they have on click, it's going to work. But at the same time, if I click around this form, if we were to have this form like the enter element like that, if I click on the enter, that click is also a click. So if you were to do an on click on a form, any click in the form element is going to trigger the function. So for forms, we don't use on click, we use another function called on submit. On submit. The good thing is just pure the normal English, so it won't be difficult. So this one is called on submit function. So instead of me doing list form dot add event listener submit here, I could just write the function I want to work out. For example, I could do another utility function down here, the same list form on submit like that. So it's going to take the app dot add list, and I want to add a new list. A moment, I select the input. So I'm going to select this input here, the list input. So just const list input equals to get element list input, then the value const list underscore name. It's a list name, of course. So I can just say list input dot dot value. I believe it can't be a function dot value. Let me just console.log to be sure if it's a value. Then I can say list underscore name. So I'll just do that like that. Come to the list form on submit and do it here. Add the function here. So whenever this form is submitted, this function will be called. But I need to like prevent the default before I go further, otherwise it will refresh the page. So usually by default, I will need to take care of the event by this stage. So event dot prevent default like that. Then how do I pass in the event? At this particular point, I just said list form dot on submit event, but that's a function. I need to pass in the event or the element. So in this case, I'm going to pass in a term called this. So what does this mean? This in this case means like this form. That's the farthest I can say about it. So this takes in different, or it gives out a different output whenever it is used. For example, in this case, I've used this as to take care of the form, as this form. So if I were to prevent to console log out the event, console.log the event, you will notice in this case this is kind of different. So do that. I'm getting something weird. It has just refreshed the page. Didn't I save this? I need to save it too. So if I do that, so somehow it's printing out something, then automatically refreshing the page, meaning I'm not doing it in the right way. Let me just update it. So whenever you use this, remember it's going to give you a different output. That's why on top here in our class we are using this, but in this case it's not representing like an element. In this case it's representing, or it's showing to this class wherever we are, just this in this environment, this class here, ToDo app class. So just remember this has different use cases, or it has a different output depending on the place where you have used it. For our case here, this is not working well, so let me know why it's not working. So it's saying event, and event.prevent default. Oh, yes, this might be funny. So whenever I do like this here, I might not be able to get to this form because I've submitted it. So that's where the terms like add event listener comes in to help us like catch the event itself. At this particular point, I might not be able to catch the event. At this particular point, if I were to print out this, it's going to print out the form without the attributes of the form, like without the properties of the form. And the form itself has those 256 attributes, 256 attribute properties, including the submit property itself. So when you do like this just represents a blank element that you can't prevent its default, because this in this case does not show if this is a form. It's just an element, so it's not going to like work out immediately. So the best option, you just listen to the event. That way you can be able to like solve the problem. So I'll just come here and go up here. Where is that event? So I pass in here the event, and by default, when you say add event listener, it will give you to the callback function. This is, that's a new term. This is a callback function. This callback function that you pass in here, by default, it is given an event to it. So I can just come here and say event dot prevent default like that. That way it will allow us to print out the console log down here. So I'll just move this up because it's somehow resulting into an error. So if I type in something and I do that, it's saying just an empty form. So this form is not what we expect. This, because this is just an element and it does not like have those properties of a form. And those properties, I mean, let me print out this other event on top here, console.log, this event. So if I do that and type in something and I print out the event, you will notice it's saying this is a submit event and it has a number of properties. Can I prevent default? Yes. So it is saying default prevented equals to true. Otherwise, the default behavior in layer, and I refresh the entire page like that one. So whenever you do that, add list, it's going to do that. So always remember to use the add event listener if you want to listen for form events like submit. So let's like go ahead and do something to our form in order to, so list form on submit. I'm going to delete this and I'm going to print out the list name. Then I'm going to use that function here, list form on submit, like that. I'm just going to call it like that and see the result. So do that. So yes, it actually it has picked our input. So I can easily say that now our list name is being picked from this input. As I said, this input has some values to, or has some properties to it, including the value property like that. So I'm trying to read the value from here, and by default we don't pass in the value. So sometimes you pass in the value if you have like the default information for that field, but if you don't have the default information, don't pass in the value. And for this case, we are not using the name attribute. We are just like just listening to or reading the value directly from the input itself using the ID. You could use the name also, but in this case I've chosen to use like the ID. I'll show you how to use the name later on and maybe on the second form. But for now, I'm using the ID. So we have been able to take the list name from the list input dot value. Then I can go ahead and add it to the list app dot add list, and I say here the list name like that. So if I do that and say YouTube and submit the form, you will notice like, okay, the list has not been added or it has not been printed out. Why is that the case? So if I were to come back here, I said here app.print lists to do, app.print lists to doc. So this is a function that should be invoked whenever I add a new list item. But in this case, I have added and it is already invoked. Why is it not working? So as I said, these things work top down, but this one is like working out of the thread. It's not working top down. It will just be there listening. Whenever I'm called, do something. So this one has already been called. Whenever I add a new item, it won't be called again.